Tom Rakocevic, Member of Provincial Parliament for Humber River Black Creek and the official opposition critic for consumer protection. I'm joined today by my colleagues MPP Catherine Fife and MPP Butila Karpoche. I'm also joined by Kenneth Whitehurst, Executive Director of the Consumers Council of Canada, and consumer advocates Barbara Kaptein and Professor Daniel Sai. Consumers deserve to be treated with fairness and honesty, but far too often, this isn't the case. Widespread gouging continues across many industries, while many businesses find sneaky ways to take advantage of consumers, especially our elderly and most vulnerable. Consumer laws have been recently updated in Ontario, but experts continue to say that they don't go far enough and more work is needed. Angry consumers keep calling Ontario's Consumer Protection Hotline, but the response is always the same: go get a lawyer. That's not the answer Ontario consumers need and deserve. That's why we are calling on the government to pass our Bill 122 Consumers Watchdog Act, to create a strong, independent consumer watchdog here in Ontario to take on bad actors no matter how big they are, to take on industry-wide gouging, to punish businesses and salespersons who take advantage of our elderly, selling them products they don't need and that don't work. Aggressive salespersons finding our most vulnerable and registering tens of thousands of dollars of liens against their properties, causing immense mental, emotional, and financial stress. This is despicable and has to stop. Consumers shouldn't have to spend months and years of their lives and countless dollars to get justice. Consumers shouldn't have to expose their struggles on TV or newspapers to get justice. If the ministry is either unwilling or unable to stand up for our consumers, then we will bring in a consumer watchdog who will. The time to act is now, and we have the solution. Yesterday, we heard from the Auditor General of Ontario, who serves the people of Ontario by conducting value-for-money audits, reviews and investigations, and reporting on them. Over the years, the work of the AG has highlighted major issues, and their information has helped MPPs by providing practical recommendations for improvements. Just like the AG, a consumer watchdog in Ontario would be given the resources and authority to highlight industry-wide issues and provide solutions and punish bad actors, bringing the highest standards of consumer protection here in our great province. The time is now. Pass Bill 122, the Consumer Watchdog Act. Now I call on MPP Butila Karpoche.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning. My name is Butila Karpoche. I'm the MPP for Parkdale High Park and the official opposition NDP critic for affordability. It's incredibly important to have a consumer protection watchdog, especially as life gets more and more unaffordable. Just think about the rising prices of groceries that we are all facing. People are finding that staples like fruits and vegetables grown in Ontario are significantly more expensive in Ontario than they are across the border. We know it's because of price gouging. It's obvious we need to act. And there are things we can do right here at the provincial level to help navigate it. There are other provinces taking action. For example, Quebec is mandating unit pricing that would give consumers transparency and clarity about the prices they're seeing. It's one tool that consumers could use to compare prices and protect themselves from gouging. This is something that the Consumer Watchdog here in Ontario could help with. We need as many tools as possible to help people in as many ways as possible. A consumer watchdog will also serve as a deterrent against unfair pricing practices by scrutinizing grocer pricing strategies. It protects consumers and helps prevent price gouging. A consumer watchdog will promote integrity in the grocery sector, and when that happens, Ontarians benefit. We need to make life more affordable for consumers across this province. And now I call on MPP Catherine Fife.
Thank you, Butila, and thank you, Tom. My name's Catherine Fife. I'm the MPP for Waterloo, and I'm the Finance and Treasury Board critic for the official opposition. So today, with this release of this plan for a consumer watchdog, the government actually has an opportunity to make real change to the lives of Ontarians, bringing in a consumer watchdog. would give Ontarians recourse when large corporations take advantage of them with predatory sales practices. Ford's Conservatives choose to leave consumers behind without the relief that they desperately need. Ontario needs a watchdog to go after those bad actors in the development industry and protect consumers. There are a number of areas that this particular person and office would actually have oversight for, but around consumer protection, around regulatory compliance, transparency and accountability, a watchdog can promote transparency, for instance, in the development industry by monitoring and reporting on the activities of developers. Consumer watchdog would also play a role in regulatory compliance. The development industry is subject to various regulations and building codes to ensure safety, quality, and environmental standards. A watchdog can enforce and would enforce compliance with these regulations, which is very much needed in the province of Ontario. A watchdog would also play a role around fair competition, around building contracts and the transparency that's needed around some of those contracts, and deal with competition issues in the development industry which arise when certain developers dominate the market and limit consumer choice and potentially leads to higher prices of housing. A watchdog in the housing development industry is essential to protect consumers, enforce regulations, promote transparency, and ensure fair competition. So with that, I'll pass this over to Kenneth Whitehurst, who is from the Consumers Council. Kenneth?
Oh, I'm Kenneth Whitehurst. I'm the Executive Director of the Consumers Council of Canada. Nationally and in Ontario, Canada's consumers require high-level government officials who speak for consumers as their sole objective and make sure they are heard in cabinet deliberations and internal trade talks affecting consumer welfare. Now, that sounds highfalutin, but it's not. We have consumer protection laws in Ontario and nationally, and we have criminal laws in Ontario and nationally, and there are two sides of this coin. There are the problems we need to be able to bring forward modern public policy in a whole new economy in this century. But the other side of it is whether or not we have the actual enforcement capacity to give force to the laws we have. And there are all kinds of signs we don't. Consumers are talking to us about that. They're talking to us about the problem of fraud. And fraud is sometimes just a consumer problem, but as it's clear, it's entered the marketplace as a criminal problem. Businesses are having problems because we don't have oversight and enforcement in the consumer space. Things get out of control. We end up with tow truck competitors bombing each other on their driveways. And that's happened. And then when they're criminal prosecutions, they don't make it to completion. So there are some really complex problems that are happening, and it requires close coordination between the federal and provincial governments. And one way that's done in Canada is through what's called the Canada Free Trade Agreement. And consumers have no voice there. So there have been regulations rewritten. For instance, you may find it confusing when you look at the tag on stuffed articles to understand what's inside. There's a reason, which is that important provincial oversight was pulled over that. So you don't know what's inside of stuffed articles in Ontario anymore. And so there are a complex problem, and it was not coordinated with the federal government. So Ontario's legislature needs the input of a strong, capable, and coherent voice to help it better understand the needs of the province's consumers and to make sure the consumer protection law it passes meets expected goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. I'm now calling on consumer advocate Barbara Kaptein.
Thank you. Consumer protection is in a sad state in Ontario. Our legal system is costly, complex, and out of reach for most consumers. Moreover, a recent Auditor General's report showed that a major government agency charged with protecting consumers had industry players with an oversized influence on its policy making and operations. Why is this happening in Ontario? Consumers are often left with no one to properly hear or understand their side of a commercial dispute. The inability to solve these disputes, or to at least see they're being handled with fairness, leads to distrust in our laws and institutions, and often to personal and financial tragedy. The government's well-worn response is, get a lawyer. But they know the legal system is equipped to serve corporations and the affluent. They know that individual consumers up against the big guys are playing a losing game. Unresolved, escalating disputes are bad for everyone, businesses, communities, and our economy as a whole. It's time to level the playing field for consumers. Stop sending consumers to a rigged game which favors the deep pockets. Give consumers balance, fairness, and an experienced advisor on their side. We need someone to champion consumer rights in Ontario. We need a consumer watchdog. Bill 122. Thank you.
I now call on consumer advocate Professor Daniel Say.
So we are all experiencing it these days. Ontario families continue to struggle against escalating grocery prices and huge food bills to feed themselves. Well, the big five grocery chains, we're talking Loblaws, Sobeys, Metro, Costco, Walmart, dominate 80% market share in this country and reap $3.5 billion in profit, whether they put back into their executives' pockets and the pockets of their owners. Canadians need a break. A family of four in this country will now pay $16,300 to feed themselves because that's the price of groceries. That's an increase of $700 from last year. And we need a government that will champion their concerns. And so with that being the case, sunlight is the best disinfectant. A Ontario consumer watchdog is what this province needs to sorely protect consumers, to fight food inflation, price gouging, because you've all experienced it when you've gone shopping. And this province needs to ensure that consumers are protected against exploitation by an oligopoly of the big five. If Ontario implements MPP Tom Rakovich's Consumer Watchdog Bill, Ontario will become the undisputed leader in protecting consumers in Canada because there's not watchdog in any of the other provinces in this country. So this is essential that we get this done, and I look forward to working with MPP Tom and his crew to make this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Professor. And I want to thank all of you who are here today in support. You've heard it from my MPP colleagues. You've heard it from experts and consumer advocates. The time is now. We need a consumer watchdog in Ontario to bring us to the standards of consumer protection that Ontarians need and deserve. And now I take any questions. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Very good.